Watch my video where I do a fascinating compare and contrast to the emerging capitalist economy of Poland and the divergent communist economy of Venezuela.
As President Nicolás Maduro and opposition leader Juan Guaidó fight for control of Venezuela, the country's residents are paying the price. Once Latin America's wealthiest country, the conflict has plunged Venezuela into deep economic turmoil. Experts say it is the single largest economic collapse outside of war in at least 45 years.
Country in South America, you have more oil reserves than any other country in the world. 18% of the global reserves are yours. Saudi second at 17%. You are rich. You're beautiful. You're doing great. Everybody wants to come to your country for vacation. Venezuela, on some of the lists, Guinness Book of World Record, the happiest people alive live in Venezuela. And in 1998, you get a guy that comes in, Hugo Chavez. Billionaires support this guy. Business owners support this guy. They're like, we like this guy. He's going to be great. And then all of a sudden, boom! Bad policies cause Venezuela to be at a point right now where in the last 10 years, 7.7 million people have left the country. 25% of the people in the country of Venezuela left. 6.5 million to, neighboring countries, South America, the famous bridge, the Simon Bolivar Bridge that they crossed to go to Colombia.
Crippled after its 19th century liberation, the country not only benefited from the discovery of oil, it was the one thing that allowed the government to remain stable via state funding or outright bribery. And for a while, though far from perfect, this worked. Modern Venezuela is one of the better-known petro-rentier states, receiving a large portion of its revenue from rent paid by businesses, governments, and foreign individuals. Annual production exploded during the 1920s from just over 1 million barrels to 137 million, making Venezuela second only to the United States in total output by 1929. By 1935, the Venezuelan bolivar ballooned, with oil becoming the top priority, accounting for 90% of the country's total exports, which led to a terrible case of Dutch disease, a trend that would remain common into the 21st century. As a result, the country saw decent growth, although it was based heavily on extracting said oil to fund an otherwise unsustainable economy. This was also dependent on importing most of what it needed in exchange for its oil. As oil continued to be extracted, just 3 foreign companies controlled 98% of the Venezuelan oil industry: Gulf, Royal Dutch Shell, and Standard Oil. In the 1950s, Venezuela took a seat at the table of economic superpowers. At the time, they were the 4th richest country in the world. By the 1960s, Venezuela's petrostate status loomed so large that it joined Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iran, and Iraq, co-founding the Organisation of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, commonly referred to as OPEC.
When Hugo Chavez took office in 1999, he promised to drive down Venezuela's huge levels of inequality. Despite the country having the largest oil reserves in the world, Chavez accused the government and the elite of leaving the majority of people behind. His socialist government moved to nationalize oil operations and focus the funds on helping the poor.
For Venezuela, this nationalised body is Petroleas Venezuela SA, or PDVSA for short. This whole dynamic was put into overdrive when Venezuela continued to discover oil deposits that took it from a modest oil state to the single largest oil state in the world.
The time has come to fight the big oil battle in Venezuela. Well, I welcome it so we can prove ourselves yet again, and we will defend our country. We will defend our revolution, we will defend our oil production, and we will defend our lives.
Thanks to booming oil prices in the early 2000s, Chavez was able to spend billions on social welfare programs. He subsidized food, improved education, built an enviable healthcare system, and reduced poverty by more than half.
From the early 2000s, this caused a boom in the economy, with gross domestic product peaking at $372 billion in 2012. This left Venezuela flush with cash, and the government, at least on the surface, tried to improve living standards with it through very generous welfare systems. Healthcare, food subsidies, and education acting as key representative pillars to show the world and its people signs of strong leadership. With a rise in oil prices and massive welfare projects in the early 2000s, the country looked like it was about to become the greatest progressive success story in modern Latin America. But there was a big problem. It never really worked, or at the very least it wasn't sustainable. What really tipped the scales was spending, and more specifically, how this money was spent. Corruption is a massive problem at all levels, from small bribes to local law enforcement all the way up to the national government, and with so much money up for grabs, there was an incentive to line people's pockets. The most desirable jobs in the country became government jobs funded by oil revenues because they had the means to embezzle it with ease. The government policies were essentially very populist and involved basically giving oil money away to keep the favour of the people. In 2014, inflation had reached 69%, the highest in the world at the time, and in 2018, inflation skyrocketed to over 130,000%. As of 2023, it's still at 190%.
Venezuelans voted for Hugo Chavez. The consequences were that my parents, who owned a gas station in Venezuela, imagine like most small business owners in this country, a BP gas station, regular thing. They were making a few $1,000s a month, like most American middle-class families do. When we went from that to making $2 a day by the year 2016, which is, according to the United Nations, the international extreme poverty line. How do you go from that? And imagine if that's what happened to a middle-class family, what happened to somebody who made less money before 20 years prior, right? That's why you saw 6 million of us live in the last 5 years. And there's no electricity, there's no water in our homes. Internet is extremely bad quality, even though there's still some internet. And we're becoming like Cuba.
From communism to capitalism, Poland's transformation is remarkable.
Poland's economy is booming. This year, it will become one of the 20 largest economies in the world. That's according to new figures from the International Monetary Fund. Now, while many of Europe's economies struggle, post-communist Poland keeps growing. Its expansion now outpaces Germany, France, and Italy. So, just how have the Poles managed to surge ahead?
Once a struggling Central European nation, Poland is now one of Europe's fastest growing economies.
After the fall of communism in 1989, Poland put this guy in charge of its economic policy, a 42-year-old economist with no experience in government or politics named Leszek Balcerowicz. And get this, it worked. Poland's rise out of communism is one of the biggest economic success stories that you've probably never heard. Balcerowicz engineered what he called shock therapy as an approach to ending communism and implementing what seemed like pretty radical reforms. He stopped letting the government set prices, allowed private ownership of industries, gave Poles more private property rights, and cut government spending. Basically, whatever the communists were doing, he did the opposite. And how did that turn out? Well, for one, everyone got a lot wealthier. When you adjust for inflation, Poland's GDP per capita was about $13,000 in 1990. In 2023, it was $44,000. And this year, it's expected to pass Switzerland to become the 20th biggest economy in the world. Balcerowicz's reforms in Poland in the 1990s went well beyond what was tried in other post-Soviet bloc countries. And thanks to him, Poland is easily the most successful country to emerge from behind the Iron Curtain.
15 years ago, Polish workers came here to find opportunity. Now, Poland is growing twice as fast as we are.
Since the UK left the EU, an increasing number of Poles have returned to their prosperous nation. Poland is also seeing a new generation of entrepreneurs, driving growth from fintech to green technology and artificial intelligence.
Generative AI could increase Poland's GDP by 8% over the next 10 years. We want to help people access the opportunities technology creates. So we are expanding our training programs to train 1 million Poles in AI skills.
And while Poland and Venezuela are separated by an ocean and a continent on top of that, they also differ vastly in their geography, location, history, peoples, and circumstance. A more accurate comparison between modern communism and modern capitalism can be made at the Korean Peninsula, where the two economic modes can be analyzed next to one another between two countries that share a nearly identical ethnicity, history, location, and geography. As you can clearly see with your own eyes, capitalist South Korea is lit up at night with thriving cities, the people peaceful and prosperous. While the communist North, in comparison, is a veritable economic desert lacking any lighting or electrical grid, the difference cannot be more stark. While Poland's emergence from communism into the capitalist world and Venezuela's descent from capitalism into communism, provides a useful compare and contrast. The stark examples of the capitalist South Korea and the communist North Korea offer no better opportunities to compare and contrast the different economic systems. The difference is incredible, undeniable, and inescapable.